The wind off the narrow sea tasted of salt and distant storms, yet on the deck of the battered cog it carried a scent far stranger. The memory of frost-kissed winter roses, blooming out of season. Lyanna Stark turned her face into that wind, eyes half closed, as though by inhaling deeply enough she might conjure Winterfell's godswood before her. But when she opened them, the horizon was as desolate as ever, only steel-gray water and the low smear of morning cloud. Essos lay ahead, Westeros behind, and somewhere between those two words, the girl she had been had slipped overboard and vanished into the waves. Behind her the ship groaned, timbers complaining like old men at dawn. Sailors in threadbare cloaks hurried on bare feet, their steps muffled by the salted planks. They pretended not to look at her, yet pretended badly. Even exiles recognized royalty when it glimmered in their midst. She wore no crown, no jewels, only a plain riding dress scavenged from a Dornish camp, and a heavy grey cloak clasped at the throat. But the wolf's head pin that fastened it was wrought of genuine silver, and the way she carried herself, as though all the cold honor of the North had been hammered into her spine, marked her as something more than a refugee. At 18, she was thin from hard travel, paler than snow after long confinement, and her dark hair, once braided with bright ribbons, had been hacked unevenly by her own dagger. Yet her eyes, gray as an icebound lake at dawn, missed nothing. A creak of hinges behind her. She did not turn. She needed no eyes in the back of her skull to tell her who trod those deliberate steps. Rhaegar Targaryen moved like a ghost in a library. Quiet, precise, forever afraid to disturb the dust of centuries. The war had stripped him of rubies and silks, but not the unfathomable melancholy that clung to his every motion. His cloak, the rich purple of House Targaryen, looked almost black in the half-light. One gloved hand rested on the pommel of a sword, wrapped in plain oilcloth. He had not drawn it since the trident, yet never set it aside. Prince or pauper, there were burdens a man bled to carry. She felt him stop beside her. For a time they shared the silence, listening to gulls wheel overhead. At last Lyanna said, "We cross at dawn's slack tide," the captain says. "Bravos by nightfall, if the gods are kind." "If the gods are kind," Rhaegar echoed, voice soft as dust on ancient parchment. He raised his hood against the wind, though his hair, the pale silver gold of Valyria, already whipped free, catching the sun like molten threads. "Do you still believe in them, my lady?" "I believe in the faces I know," she said. "The Weirwood's carved one, my father's stern one, my brother's laughing ones. The rest," she exhaled cloudy breath, "I suppose we'll learn which listened soon enough." "It matters," he said. "If Bravos bars her gates, we will need more than iron and gold to purchase sanctuary." "They will not bar them," she replied, with a fierceness that surprised even her. "Bravos remembers Aegon's wrath. The Sea Lords fear dragons, and dragons fear islands of stone, or so the songs claim. But men fear what they see, and in their harbor stands only an empty prow worn smooth by tide. They will welcome us for trade, if not for love." Rhaegar watched her, head tilted as though regarding a particularly elegant yet perilous verse. "You speak as if you have read the Bravosi ledgers." "I have read travelers' tales, and I have seen what fear does to men with ledgers. My father's steward kept the castle books. I watched him tremble when winter stores ran low." Her lips quirked. "Even wolves must count grain, your grace." He flinched at the title. For 10 days she had wielded it deliberately, daring him to discard it. Intense, in barns, on stolen horses and leaky skiffs, wherever fate washed them. She named him king aloud, a crown forged of obstinacy. He never contradicted her, yet neither did he accept. The silence between declaration and denial grew heavier each day, until she sometimes felt it might crush her beneath invisible stone. Beyond the rail, The sea stirred, slate waves lifting white manes before collapsing. She rested gloved fingers on damp wood. "Do you think Brandon would have laughed?" she asked suddenly. "To see me here, bargaining passage with smugglers, naming Dragonlords kings?" "Your brother was a proud man," Rhaegar answered after long deliberation. "I think pride can bend into cruelty if vengeance sharpens it. But laughter, even direwolves can laugh when the night is long enough." The answer was careful, almost courtly, and it nettled her. "You did not know him. None of you southern lords knew any of us. We were thorns in your courtiers' palms, rough and bristling. Perhaps that is why Robert's songs made me a princess in a tower. He could not fathom a maid who carried nettles beneath her gown." She shook her head. "Brandon would not have laughed. He would have cursed the winds and seized the wheel himself. That is what elder brothers do." "And younger ones?" Rhaegar's voice fell to a hush. Lyanna's throat tightened, remembering a boy's outraged cry when she bested him with a blunt sword in Winterfell's yard. "They follow, even when the path leads them through darkness." She swallowed. "Even into hushed hallways where women whisper that dragons taste of ash." Rhaegar bowed his head. In the gesture she glimpsed both sorrow and some deeper wound he did not yet trust her to see. "When we reach Braavos," he murmured, "I must begin again. A king without a kingdom, a knight without a tourney. There will be no songs to mark the days." "There will be," she corrected. "If not of harps, then of Longship Creek and Gull Cry. And when you stand beneath the Titan's gaze, you will hear your name carried on the tide. Kingship is not forged by crowns, Rhaegar. It is forged by what a man shelters beneath his cloak when winter closes its fist." His silver brows knit. "And what do I shelter, Lyanna?" She turned to him fully at last. The salt wind painted her cheeks with chill, yet in her eyes glowed a stubborn warmth old gods might envy. "Use," she said. "All of us who still draw breath and call you Lord. My father's bones were buried in frost. My brother's futures lie uncertain across a strife-torn sea. But I stand here, and I will not kneel to any other banner." He studied her, as if carving the shape of her resolve into memory. Then, almost imperceptibly, he inclined his head. It was not a king's nod, no courtly decree, but something gentler and infinitely more dangerous: gratitude. The cog lurched as a stronger swell struck. Rhaegar braced a hand on the rail beside hers. Their shoulders brushed through wool and leather. She felt the warmth of him, slender though he was, running hot beneath winter garments. For a heartbeat, they were no prince and Northmaid, but two young souls adrift between worlds. Footsteps approached, stout, hurried. The captain, a squat man with a faded red scarf and eyes like tarnished brass, halted a respectful pace away. "You're..." He faltered under Lyanna's cool gaze, then cleared his throat. "Lady, Monsieur, we sight the Titan's torch at first bell. Best keep close. Braavos can be overwhelming." Lyanna inclined her head. "Thank you, Captain. We will be ready." He shuffled off. Rhaegar exhaled, frost curling from his lips. "Overwhelming," he repeated. She sensed his trepidation and, on impulse, reached toward him. Her gloved fingers brushed his bare wrist. "Let it be," she whispered. "Let the brine sting your eyes and the city roar like a dragon unchained. We have bled enough for hush." His hand turned beneath hers, fingers gliding over the back of her glove. Arc leapt, hot iron striking ice. Yet, before either could speak, the sky itself growled, a distant thunder that rolled from the east. They looked up together. Clouds thickened like smudged charcoal, swallowing dawn's faint gold. Lightning spat in silent flickers within their bellies, and the wind shifted, coming colder, sharper, laden with a foreboding taste. "Storm," Lyanna murmured. "Perhaps more," Rhaegar said. His gaze lingered on the horizon as though he expected ghosts to stride from cloud to shadow. The sea remembers old quarrels, and so do gods. Lyanna's thoughts flew to the direwolves that adorned her childhood dreams, prowling the snows amid red leaves. Then let the sea test us, she said quietly. If we break, we were never worthy of the crown you refuse. He said nothing, but his grip on her hand tightened. Together, they watched the sky bruise darker. By the time the Titan's colossal braziers emerged, two red eyes above jagged rocks, rain had begun to fall in fine, freezing needles. The cog's lanterns bobbed like fireflies, reflected in black water. Around her, Lyanna heard sailors muttering prayers in tongues, foreign and salt-eroded. The nearer they drew, the more the Titan loomed. 50 fathoms of night-colored bronze, shaped like a warrior striding the sea, sword raised in silent challenge. Beneath that blade every ship must pass, paying silent homage or risk unseen wrath. Braavos was a city of songs and swords, of canals that wound like serpent veins through a maze of purple-tiled roofs. But the first thing Lyanna saw was not the glittering patchwork of houses, nor the spires of guild halls, but the silhouettes of chained hulks, the Ragman's harbor, where failed captains offered cargo at cutthroat rates. Torches flickered on quays crowded with bales of spice, coils of rope, casks painted with strange glyphs. Voices rose, harsh and hurried, bargaining in a dozen dialects. It reminded her of White Harbor's docks, multiplied by madness. The cog thudded against a barnacle-crusted post. Sailors tossed thick lines, secured knots. The captain bowed, invoking some clause of discretion for which he clearly expected additional coin, but Rhaegar only inclined his head and stepped ashore without ceremony. Her boots sank half an inch into muck, the smell of wet hemp and sour wine and fish guts thick in the rain. She drew her cloak tighter. Rhaegar surveyed the chaos with cool detachment. Lightning flashed behind the Titan, carving every shadow in blade-like relief. Yet in that merciless glare he seemed strangely calm, perhaps because nothing before him could rival the storm that had already blurred his past. He took a slow breath, like a minstrel preparing first note, and then moved. Lyanna followed as he threaded narrow passages between stacked crates and tethered mules. Twice knives glinted from pockets of gloom, but something in the prince's bearing, or perhaps the flash of his concealed sword, kept petty thieves at bay. They passed beneath an archway where a dead lantern swayed on rusted chains and emerged onto a wider street of slick cobbles. Candlelight glimmered behind shutters. Laughter spilled from a tavern whose sign depicted a blindfolded maiden and a snarling goat. Rain hammered slate roofs, ran in rivulets down gutters designed to spit onto any soul bold or foolish enough to tread close to the walls. They halted under a protruding eave. Water still slithered down in chill curtains, but at least wind could not claw their faces. Rhaegar's hair clung to his brow in silver rivulets. Lyanna's braid had half unraveled, dark strands plastered to her cheeks. "Shelter," she said. "Food, dry clothes. Then allies? No. German, Dazed, Shirky, or enemies who think themselves allies," he replied. His gaze traced a passing patrol of Braavosi guards, men in black cloaks embroidered with a crescent moon and the key of the Sea Lord. Their spears were tipped with shining steel. Their faces, hidden behind plain iron masks, betrayed nothing. This city was founded by slaves who fled old Valyria. Its sons do not forget Dragon's cruelty. "You are not Balerion," she countered. "You fled your own doom." He offered a faint smile, bleak, wondering. "Perhaps they will read that in my eyes. Or perhaps," she said, "they will read it in mine, and see the wolf who chose to guard the dragon's flame." Another patrol approached, lanterns bobbing like will-o-wisps. Rhaegar gestured, They slipped into a narrow alley just as the guards marched past. The alley smelled of cat piss and moldy straw. Rats scurried beneath broken crates. Yet at its far end glimmered a modest store, unmarked but for the faint outline of a coin, and a dagger scratched into damp wood. Rhaegar brushed a knuckle across the etching. "Miri said to find the coin and dagger," he murmured. "She said many things," LYANNA replied, voice low. "Some contradictory, but this we can test." She tapped the door twice, paused. Silence answered. She tried again. 3 rapid knocks, mimicking a raven's beak. Still nothing. "Perhaps she fooled us," Rhaegar said. "Or perhaps Braavos sleeps lightly." LYANNA pressed her ear to the wood. Faint scrape. Footsteps just beyond. They watch. She stepped back, lifting both palms to show emptiness. "Open," she called in the common tongue. Then in clumsy Bravosi, "Io ti pregi." A latch slid. The door cracked. Dark eyes, reflecting candlefire, studied them through a gap no wider than a blade's breadth. A woman's voice, cautious. "Name your coin." LYANNA answered instantly, remembering Miri's whispered code. "Iron, that remembers its chains." The door swung. They ducked inside and into lantern glow that painted walls the color of old parchment. The woman who admitted them wore a gray cloak trimmed with red silk, plain, yet her bearing hinted a dancer's poise. She bolted the door, then regarded them beneath hooded lids. "You travel wet," she said. "We travel far," Rhaegar answered. "Far is no passport. Names are passports. Yet names cut both giver and bearer." She gestured toward a stairwell descending into deeper gloom. "Below you may trade one for the other, but be warned. The Titan's shadow stretches long even beneath roofs." LYANNA felt a chill unrelated to rain. Rhaegar inclined his head. "We understand." The woman led them down, stone steps worn smooth by centuries. At their base sprawled a crypt-like vault lit by guttering torches. The air smelled of myrrh and stale wine. Along walls hung draped banners, sigils unfamiliar to Westerosi eyes. Broken manacles, shattered swords, a black ship's hull cracked by lightning. Exile's heraldry. A long table of dented bronze occupied the vault's center. Around it lounged a dozen men and women in travel-stained garb. Some bore scars fresh and angry. Others displayed the careful stillness of killers who had grown tired of counting corpses. Voices lowered as LYANNA and Rhaegar were guided to empty chairs. The woman who'd led them took position at the table's head. "My name is Alanis Coheres," she announced. "This is the house of fugitives. We shelter those cast out by crowns or seeking to forge new ones from ash. Your coins?" Rhaegar eased the oilcloth from his sword's hilt just enough to reveal the pale metal beneath. Not Valyrian steel, but fine nonetheless. He placed a ruby from its pommel on the table. LYANNA set beside it a direwolf pendant of carved jet taken from her childhood bedchamber. Alanis regarded the tokens. "Blood and bone," she said softly. "Dragonfire and northern night. A heavy bid." Her gaze lifted. "State your quarrel." Rhaegar's hand hovered near the ruby. "I am Rhaegar of House Targaryen." Murmurs rippled down the table. Alanis raised a hand until they stilled. "Titles? None I may claim aloud without kindling war," he said. "Yet I bear them nonetheless. You know them." Eyes shifted to LYANNA. She met each stare without flinching. "I am LYANNA Stark of Winterfell, kidnapped." So the realm was told. Yet I stand here freely. I name Rhaegar my king in exile. Will you deny my voice? Silence. Then Alanis smiled, slow, thoughtful, like a sword sliding an inch from sheath. "A wolf crowns a dragon. Who among us dreamt of such a night? but we are thieves of fate here. We relish broken chains. She touched LYANNA's pendant, then the ruby. The realm that hunts you is far, yet its claws grow long. What seek you from Bravos? Ships, Rhaegar said. Coin, names that open doors west of the narrow sea. Why return to the claws that maim you? To mend what is broken. He looked around the table. Do any here doubt the seven kingdoms bleed still? Lordship bought with usurpers, coin leaves widows in every village. The wheel grinds on. I would break it. An old man with a scarred lip leaned forward. A dragon promises wheels broken. I have heard this song. In Cahor, a prince swore the same and left ashes. Rhaegar did not blink. I offer not a promise but a path. I carry no dragon fire, only the will of those who lost sons to a war of pride. Let them choose. If I fail, exile claims me, and the wheel grinds still. But if I succeed, he spread empty palms. Perhaps the realm remembers mercy. Alani studied him. Mercy is dear in Bravos. Everything is dear in Bravos. LYANNA's tone cut through murmurs. We will pay. In coin, in service, in truth. Ask your price. A hush. Alana's gaze flicked to the storm lanterns guttering in their sconces. Truth, she repeated. Very well. An hour passed. A Raven's Eye galley docked, bearing a sealed parchment. Its stamp, the crowned stag of King Robert Baratheon. Word of your flight runs swifter than ships, it seems. The parchment instructs all captains to watch for a silver-haired fugitive and a northern maid. Rewards hefty as a merchant prince's dowry. She paused. What truth will you pay to convince us your cause outweighs that dowry? Rhaegar's reply was iron, that the girl you name Maid saved both your city and realm from fire. My father meant to burn King's Landing with wildfire, but LYANNA's plea stayed my hand from pressing an assault that might have sparked that madness. Her survival shattered his last pretext. Whatever Robert owes Westeros, he owes her life 1,000-fold. LYANNA heard the gasp before she felt the memories rise. Green wildfire beneath Aerys's throne. The screams of small folk damned by a mad king's whim. She swallowed the taste of smoke. Across the table, a woman with braided blonde hair whispered something and crossed herself. Aleni's expression softened by a hair's breadth. Prove it. LYANNA stood, the chair scraping stone. If you doubt my scars, fetch a maester. She unclasped her cloak, letting it fall. Beneath, her bodice concealed the worst, yet a ridge puckered above the neckline, the mark where Maester Mykel's blade had lanced an infected wound gained during their flight. She touched it. I bled so he could choose a crown unsoiled by my death. Is that truth enough? The vault held its breath. Alani slowly nodded. Enough, for now. The House of Fugitives grants you harbor 3 days. In that time you must win patronage among the Iron Bank's lesser factors or the Faceless themselves, else you must depart. This is the limit of our protection. Rhaegar inclined his head. We accept. Alani's beckoned a servant, who led them to a narrow cell containing 2 cots and a brazier. Straw mattresses smelled of clove husks. LYANNA lowered herself onto one, boots aching from days of damp. Rhaegar remained standing until the servant left, then knelt to unlace her sodden boots. She started. You needn't. I will not have my queen wake lame. The intimacy of the word queen silenced her protests. He set each boot aside, then drew a blanket over her. Only when her eyes fluttered close did he seat himself against the opposite wall, sword across knees, and stare into the brazier's struggling fire. LYANNA drifted between waking and dream. Rain drummed, torches hissed, and somewhere deep in the vault, A distant chant rose, voices naming justice in tongues older than crowns. Through half-lidded eyes, she watched Rhaegar's silhouette shimmer in firelight, delicate as a line of music. She wondered what song played in his thoughts. Perhaps the same that thrummed through her own veins, not the tragic ballad of a stolen maid, but a dirge-turned battle hymn, the rhythm of hooves on winter ground. Sleep claimed her at last, yet in dreams she walked not the crypts of Winterfell, but a vast hall of black stone where pale banners rippled in cold wind, and upon an iron throne sat no stag, nor lion, nor dragon, but a lone dire wolf crowned with tangled rose stems. Its howl echoed through vaulted shadows. She woke with a start, heart hammering. The brazier had burned low. Rhaegar dozed sitting upright, lips parted as though shaping words to an unseen tune. Lyanna rose, tucked her cloak about her shoulders, and crossed quietly to the cell's doorway. Beyond lay a corridor lined with shuttered alcoves. At its far end, a chink of candlelight spilled. She followed it to a small chamber, where Alani stood before a water-stained map pinned to the wall. She did not turn when Lyanna entered. "Cannot sleep?" the Braavosi asked. "I dream too loudly," Lyanna replied. Alanis traced a coastline scratched in faded ink. The narrow sea births nightmares, gulls with men's voices, waves shaped like screaming kings. It spares no queen. Lyanna approached the map. It depicted the free cities, yet someone had inked new routes in red, sweeping west beyond the sea's edge. "What do these mark?" "Loans," Alanis said. "Promises, old debts soon due. Yours, ours." She tapped Braavos, then a thin red line arching toward Westeros stormlands. "The Ironbank backs wars the way smiths back nails, whichever head drives best. Robert sits uneasy on his throne. If word spreads you live, that the child once rumored in your belly never existed, that you name Rhaegar king, well, nails may bend. Nebasior. Elim." Lyanna's hands curled, remembering whispers of pregnancy used to justify abduction. "I was never with child," she said quietly. "Yet songs treat rumor as gold." Alanis turned, dark eyes weighing her. "Tell me true, do you love him?" Lyanna opened her mouth, closed it. Lulled by secret dances at Harrenhal, tempered by flight through Dorne, scarred by blood on Targaryen steel. "I chose him," she said at last, "when choice was all that remained of me." Alanis's gaze softened. "Sometimes that is the most durable love. Sometimes it shatters." "It may shatter," Lyanna said, "but I will not." She laid two fingers on the re-jinked line. "I will walk this path, with him or alone. If Braavos must weigh dragons and wolves, remember this. Wolves born in winter learn to starve kings if need be." Lenny smiled. A sharp, approving curve, spoken like a queen on crown. She took a charcoal stick and drew a new branch from the red line, pointing not west but north toward the wall. "Then mark your hunting ground, my lady. Kings may sail south to win thrones, but I suspect your war waits in the snow's hush." Lyanna followed the arc. "The wall," she whispered. "Yes." Alanis' voice lowered. "Ravens bring rumors, white shadows, vanishings, old terror stirring. Westeros chooses kings while winter chooses graves. If you would crown Exile, crown him where men remember why kings must keep watch." Lyanna imagined Rhaegar atop the wall, staring into endless night, a ruby-hilted sword blazing frostfire. The vision sent a thrill of dread and promise through her bones. She nodded. "I will take him there." When she returned to the cell, dawn's first gray seeped through a crack high in the wall. Rhaegar's eyes opened at her soft tread. "Lyanna?" She knelt before him. "When you were born, did any foresee snowbound thrones?" He blinked, confusion giving way to wary curiosity. "No." Then let us pen new prophecies. She reached for his hand. Wear this, that before you claim any crown forged of forged spears, you will face the wall and measure yourself against the wind beyond. His fingers curled around hers, steady, warm. I swear, he said. Then rise, she whispered. Being in exile, winter calls. He did not question the vow's suddenness. He only stood, gathering cloak and sword. They left the cell together, footsteps echoing down the vault's corridor where torches sputtered. Outside, Braavos stirred, washing night's rain into memory. Above rooftops, the iron bank's domes caught wan sunlight like tarnished silver. Somewhere a tavern lute began a tentative tune. New strings testing morning. LYANNA paused at the threshold, breathing brine-tinged air. She felt the city's pulse beneath cobbles, and beneath that, the deeper pulse of continents shifting toward war. Rhaegar joined her, and for an instant, they stood almost touching, twin silhouettes against a waking world. Then they moved north, toward the canals, toward the docks where rumors traveled swift as gulls, where iron coins clinked and whispered of destinies bought and sold. They would find a ship bound for Eastwatch, or perhaps White Harbor, and across that stormy splintered sea, the wall waited. An unbroken line of winter. Somewhere beyond it, secrets older than thrones stirred. And though neither spoke it aloud, each felt the tug of unseen strings, the hand of history poised to carve their names anew. King and wolf, exile and survivor, they stepped into Braavos' labyrinth, hearts beating a rhythm neither lute nor warhorn yet knew, but would soon have to learn. First canals smelled of river lilies crushed beneath morning punts. Mist clung to its surface, wrapping low bridges in cotton threads. Gondoliers in striped cloaks called to one another, their voices ricocheting off damp stone. LYANNA and Rhaegar flagged a narrow skiff, whose prow was carved like a yawning kraken. The boatman, a squat woman with arms roped in muscle, eyed their cloaks, but asked no questions. For 2 copper coins she ferried them past lavender-painted houses, whose shutters bore little brass faces, some laughing, some weeping. LYANNA traced patterns in the water with gloved fingertips, each ripple folded under the next, swallowing reflections. Braavos feels like a dream told by someone who never woke, she said. Rhaegar's gaze slid across balconies hung with wet laundry. Dreams tell truths that waking eyes deny. Does your harp still dream? She asked. He touched the satchel slung at his shoulder, where the battered silver-stringed instrument rested. Its voice cracked on the trident, he murmured. But sometimes cracks make room for new chords. She smiled. Then let us tune them. The skiff turned beneath an arched bridge, where beggars dangled blackwood bowls on ropes, chanting for alms. Rhaegar flipped a coin. A bowl clattered as copper struck wood. A ragged child peered over, surprise bright in soot-smudged face. LYANNA watched the coin spin, thinking of Winterfell's kitchens where no child ever went hungry. She wondered whether that remained true. They disembarked at a courtyard paved in green marble. Across it rose the traveler's hearth, an inn whose sign depicted a copper kettle steaming atop crossed oars. Even at this hour, clamor seeped from its shuttered windows. Laughter, argument, the clink of dice. A fresco above the door showed a woman astride a seahorse, hair streaming like smoke. Beneath, in Braavosi script, ran the inn's motto, "All journeys meet the sea." Inside, firelight painted round tables where Sel's words diced beside silk-robed factors. At one hearth, a Lyzine courtesan sang a lilting lament. At another, Myrish mercenaries argued prices for summer wine. The innkeeper, a plump man with powdered hair, approached with a studied bow. "Welcome, travelers. We host many storms beneath our roof. Might I shield you with breakfast and a private room?" Nalun. Rhaegar produced a silver stag, coin of Westeros. The innkeeper's brows climbed, but he accepted smoothly. flicking the coin across knuckles before pocketing it. "This way, honored guests." He led them to a chamber on the second floor, overlooking the canal. Curtains of rich indigo silk fluttered in cool breeze. A polished oak table waited with bread, figs, and a carafe of watered wine. Once the door closed behind the innkeeper, LYANNA crossed to the window. Gondolas drifted like shadows below, their wakes tracing lazy spirals. Rhaegar poured 2 cups. He offered one. She sipped, tasting citrus. He watched her. Something waited in his gaze. "When we knelt before that table, did you believe they would spare us?" he asked. "I believed we had crossed too many leagues to doubt at the threshold," she said. "Bravos has no patience for heroes who second guess." He looked into his cup, the wine reflecting flickers of dawn. "My father would have burned this city for harboring us. Your father burned men alive for less." The bitterness surprised her. She softened her tone. "You are not him, Rhaegar. The realm will learn that if you give it time. One LYANNA. Time." He smiled wryly. "The one crown every king covets but none can keep." She set her cup down. "Then spend it wisely. Begin with small steps. Today we purchase maps, gather whispers. Tonight you play your harp here. Bravossi love, songs of sorrow. Let them weep into their cups, and remember the prince who strummed silver strings. Tomorrow we hire passage north." "North," he echoed. "To Winterfell? To the Wall first. My uncle Benjen serves there now. He will not turn us away." Rhaegar's eyes widened a fraction. "You trust him with us?" She lifted her chin. "The Wall's oath forbids politics. Benjen will honor that, and he will see truth in my eyes." A shadow crossed Rhaegar's features. "And if he does not, then I will remind him," she said simply, "that blood runs thicker than broken vows." He accepted that. Silence stretched, companionable. At length he drew his harp from the satchel, tested a string. The note thrummed, low and aching. He adjusted a peg, plucked again, clearer now, a sound like river water over stones. LYANNA closed her eyes, letting the vibration wrap her. "Do you wish to return home?" he asked quietly. "Omini. Yui." She tasted the word. Winterfell's courtyards buried in snow. The scent of pine smoke, Hodder's booming laughter as he lugged barrels, Septa Mordaine's voice chastising Arya for muddy boots. "Yes," she whispered, "but when I do, it must be with honor intact, not as some stolen treasure. I will walk through those gates by my own stride, wearing truth like armor." Rhaegar nodded, plucking another chord that shimmered like dawn on hoarfrost. "Then we walk." He began to play, a soft prelude, simple notes that danced around one another. LYANNA felt tension melt from her shoulders. She leaned against the window frame, listening. The melody grew, weaving threads of sweetness and sorrow, until room and city blurred. She saw children chasing snowflakes beneath castle walls, saw summer grass brushing horses' legs, saw rivers of wildfire reflecting starry sky, visions bright and fleeting. When the last note faded, she realized tears streaked her cheeks. She wiped them, embarrassed. Rhaegar set the harp aside, reached, but did not touch. "The song is unfinished," he said. "Then finish it," she whispered. He glanced toward the door. "Tonight, for Braavosi ears first, then, perhaps, for the Wall." A knocking interrupted. They stiffened, but it was only a serving girl bearing hot porridge and honeyed tea. She curtsied, eyes lingering upon Rhaegar's silver hair before retreating. LYANNA realized with mild alarm how that hair blazed in any crowd. They would need dyes or hoods heavier than cloth. They ate in near silence. Afterward, Rhaegar extracted from his satchel a folded parchment, an old map of the north, edges frayed. He smoothed it across the table. His finger traced a route from White Harbor up the King's Road, branching to Castle Black. Lyanna watched, noting villages along the way: Long Lake, Last Hearth, Queen's Crown. Her heart twisted. Each name was a memory half forgotten. Each would carry new stories now. Winter's Teeth Pass may be snowed, she murmured. We take the White Knife upriver instead, then ride along the Gift. Rhaegar nodded. Speed matters less than secrecy. She touched the map's blank margins. Once we stand atop the wall, we will see beyond Westeros. Sometimes I dream of that vantage, the world laid out like a board, pieces waiting. His lips curved. A wolf strategizes. A wolf survives. She folded the map onto his. We should find dyes before dusk. Your hair shines like moonlight on armor. He reached up, self-conscious. A small price for heritage. Heritage can wait. She stood. Come, moi. We trade gold for mud brown and soot black. It will itch, but better than arrow shafts. No. They left the chamber, descending to the common room now thick with midday patrons. Shipwrights hawking berths, priests of the many-faced god in mottled cloaks, a sell-sail troop sharing greasy sausages. Lyanna kept her hood low. Rhaegar did likewise, though wisps of silver still peeped. They crossed to the innkeeper, paying another silver stag for the rooms next 2 nights, then stepped into Bravos Labyrinth. Markets bloomed beneath strip sails strung to catch the drizzle. Stalls overflowed with dyed silks, jars of saffron, cages of chittering monkeys. Lyanna bartered with a dyemonger who claimed his brews could blacken even a kraken's beak. For 2 silver pieces, she bought a small flask labeled Knight's Cloak and a squirrel hairbrush. Next, a tailor's stall yielded plain wool cloaks, brown for him, slot gray for her. Finally, they procured supplies: dried figs, hard cheese wrapped in waxed cloth, whetstones for Rhaegar's sword, and a thin steel dirk balanced for Lyanna's grip. After each trade, they circled through alleys, ensuring no tail lingered. Bravos teamed too thickly for easy surveillance, yet caution was habit. By late afternoon, they returned to the traveler's hearth. Upstairs, Lyanna stirred the dye with warm water while Rhaegar stripped to waist. Muscles, lean yet sinewy, moved beneath scarred skin. She felt a flush, but focused on task. She painted strands from root to tip, the smell sharp as burnt almonds. When finished, his Wonka silver hair lay flat and dark, indistinguishable from coal save faint sheen. He washed, toweled dry, and turned to her. I look changed, he said, studying mirror. You look alive, she countered, and that is change enough. She rinsed brush, then unpinned her own hair. He offered to help, and she permitted, trusting his steady fingers to comb dye through tresses until her raven locks deepened to near black, hiding hints of stark brown that might betray noble lineage. They paused, faces inches apart, dye speckles dotting their cheeks like constellations. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For not letting me drown in regret. He reached to wipe a drop from her brow, his thumb lingering a breath longer than necessary. She caught it, held his hand. The space between them crackled. A bell tolled below, first dinner call. She released him. You must play tonight, she reminded. Let songs carry rumor of a shadow-haired bard, not a silver prince. He exhaled. As you command, my lady wolf. Night fell swift, clutching Bravos in damp gloves. In the common room, benches filled by lamplight. Rhaegar took a seat near the hearth, cradling Heartbody. Lyanna sat at a corner table, hood up, a cup of mulled wine before her. She watched as he plucked tentative strains, soft at first, so conversation nearly drowned them. Gradually he leaned in, coaxing richer timbre. Voices lowered, dice stilled. Even the inn-serving lad halted mid-tray. The melody poured like warm honey over fevered skin. It spoke of long roads and colder beds, of banners torn from ramparts, and hearts sewn anew with silver thread. Lyanna's chest tightened. She saw eyes glisten across the room, hardened killers blinking away memory. Rhaegar's voice joined, murmured lyrics in Valyrian, flowing like water through stone. Though none understood the words, the ache remained. When the last chord faded, no applause erupted, only a collective exhale, as if listeners emerged from underwater. Coins clinked into a basket near his stool. He bowed once, modest, then slipped away. Lyanna rose to meet him on the stairs. They did not speak until their chamber door closed. He set the coin-heavy basket on the table. "Enough for 3 ships," he said, marveling. "Songs print gold," she noted. "Tonight I learned the cost of silence." He poured wine with trembling hands. She steadied the jug. Their fingers brushed. Something unleashed, pent up as winter rivers beneath thaw, flooded forth. He bent, pressing lips to her knuckles. She drew him upright, fingers entangling in freshly dark hair. His breath hitched, warm as flickering candle. For a heartbeat they hovered, history pressing close, futures crackling like twin blades. A knock shattered the moment. Rhaegar stiffened, hand dropping to sword. Lyanna slid to the door. "Who seeks?" she called. "Message," a husky voice replied. She cracked door. A boy, no more than 12, thrust a folded parchment. He fled before reward could be offered. Lyanna locked door, broke seal. Inside, in neat Bravosi script, "North gates close on the turning tide. A ship waits. Sea witch, captain owes coin to the wolf. Passage paid. Sail before dawn, else Robert's gold buys longer knives. Remember the wall. Eleni's." Lyanna handed to Rhaegar. He scanned, eyes narrowing. "She moves quickly. She knows stags run fast," Lyanna said. He began packing. She doused a brazier. Within minutes they donned cloaks, slinging packs. Lyanna ensured her dirk lay hidden at lower back. Rhaegar strapped harp across shoulders, sword beneath cloak. They slipped into hall, downstairs, through kitchen where a cook snored by dying embers. Out back, rain had ceased, leaving streets shining like obsidian. The north gate lay a mile across bridge of fools. They hurried, footsteps muffled on slick stone. Shadows tracked them. Too many, too fluid. Lyanna sensed rather than saw. At a half-shuttered stall, she glimpsed a figure peel from gloom, iron mask glinting. "Gah," she whispered. Rhaegar pulled hood lower. They turned onto a narrower lane where brine-wet ropes hung from balconies. Ahead loomed a covered bridge, sculpted gargoyles spitting water. Beneath its arch, a quartet of guards waited, spears crossed. Lyanna cursed silently. Turning back would lead them deeper into patrols. She scanned walls, plaster slick, but drain pipes offered handholds. She pointed. Rhaegar understood. They ducked into a doorway, leapt for pipe. Lyanna scrambled first, boots slipping on moss. She climbed to a balcony, Rhaegar close behind. Inside the room, a couple slumbered in tangle of sheets. Moonlight pooled across their bare shoulders. Lyanna eased window open, motioned. They crept through, hearts pounding. The corridor beyond slept quiet. They ran along carpet of faded crimson, descended servants' stairs, emerging onto a ledger-filled office where a lone clerk dozed. Lyanna eased past, but Rhaegar paused to drop 3 silver coins on the desk, a penance for intrusion. They slipped through a side door into an alley parallel to the guarded arch. Torches flickered near gatehouse. A horn sounded. distant, but urgent. LYANNA quickened pace. They rounded a corner, and there, bobbing against tide-worn pilings, lay the Sea Witch, sails furled, crew limbering lines. A lantern hung on her prow burned green, a signal. They sprinted down pier. A sailor spotted them, waved. Midway, a shout erupted behind. Guards. Arrows whined, clattering off mooring posts. LYANNA ducked. Rhaegar shoved her forward. The sailor threw a rope. LYANNA caught it, swung across gap, landing hard on deck. She turned. Rhaegar still on pier, parrying a guard's spear with bare sword. He sidestepped, swept blade flat against attacker's helm, sending man to timber. Another lunged. Rhaegar kicked knee, drove hilt into jaw. Blood sprayed. Rhaegar, LYANNA cried. He retreated 2 steps, vaulted railing. Sailors hauled him over as arrows thudded mass. The captain, a lank man with gold-toothed grin, barked orders. Lines cast off, oars dipped, churning dark water. The Sea Witch slid from pier, turning toward open channel. On deck, LYANNA seized Rhaegar's arm. "You're hurt." "Scratches," he panted. She saw crimson seeping through sleeve. Nothing mortal, but enough to sting. She bounded with strip torn from cloak. Guards shouted from receding pier. Torches streaked like comets as they ran along quay, powerless. Rhaegar exhaled, gaze meeting hers. "We sail." She managed a huff of laughter, half relief, half wild exhilaration. Your Grace, we sail." The Sea Witch caught tide, slipping through Bravos North Gate, moments before its iron jaws creaked shut. Behind them, the Titan watched in silence, braziers guttering crimson. Ahead stretched an expanse of sea, shivering under starlight. LYANNA stood at prow beside Rhaegar. Wind tugged, hair dyed black as night, but could not smother the fierce smile burning on her lips. She imagined the wall rising, cold, ancient, and beyond it something older still, calling. Beside her, Rhaegar lifted harp, plucked a single note. It hung between them, pure as fresh snow. Then he began to weave a new song. No longer lament, but prelude to dawn. LYANNA closed her eyes and listened, letting the music etch constellations on her soul. Exile had crowned them not with gold, but with purpose, and purpose weighed lighter than any diadem. The sea opened before them, and somewhere within its patient roar, she heard the first distant crack of ice as winter woke to greet its unlikely king and wolf bride. They sailed into darkness, yet carried their own light, fragile, defiant, unquenchable, and the world, whether ready or not, would soon feel its warmth. Yeru Shah. The Sea Witch knifed northward for 3 nights and 2 days, sails belly full of rough wind that smelled of old kelp and coming snow. The captain, Garland Scolari, swore his single-masted galley could outsprint any Lysani corsair from Bravos to Pentos, yet by the second dusk, even his gold tooth stopped flashing when he spoke. Squall brewed behind them, wall of pewter cloud that spat whitecaps like spittle. The crew reefed canvas, lashed cargo, and muttered ugly prayers to the Merlin King. LYANNA stood at the bow, while spray needled her cheeks. Each wave reared like a greyhound and slammed the hull. But she rode the rise and fall as surely as a Winterfell stable boy rides a fractious colt. A lifetime on horseback had taught her balance. The sea was only another beast to read. She felt the waters pulse through the deck boards, the ship's answering creak, and the heavier throb in her veins that whispered, "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" Rhaegar emerged from below, cloak billowing. His hair, dyed coal dark, clung in wet ropes. "Captain says we make Sisterton by dawn," he called over the wind. "If we do not founder first." "We will not," she answered. Lightning forked behind the storm wall. Thunder boomed like the gods beating kettle drums. She watched the pale flash limn Rhaegar's face, chiseling cheekbones and the long curve of his nose into something almost sap. The world has not come this far just to drown us now. He joined her at the rail, slipping an arm around her waist, more for balance than intimacy, though she felt both. Fate seldom heeds petitions. True. She tightened her grip on the wet railing. But wolves do not petition, we bite. A grin touched his mouth. It looked new on him, half wild. Then wind howled louder, scattering conversation. Wood groaned, shrouds snapped. The sea witch heeled hard, sending sailors stumbling. Captain Scolari bellowed orders in some Essosi tongue. Rhaegar pulled LYANNA toward the mainmast, where the listing felt less. They braced against its tar-black trunk as rain arrived, sharp and icy, riding sideways. For hours, the storm worried them, like a dog worries an old bone. Sheets of water crashed over deck, extinguishing lanterns. At one point, the topmast sail split with a sound like a dying wyvern. Canvas flapped, lines tangled, a yard snapped and swung free to crush a cask on the foredeck. Two sailors went over the side. LYANNA flung herself flat, fingers hooked through a ring bolt. She watched Rhaegar haul a deckhand back from the rail with impossible calm, as though plucking a harp string. When the youth collapsed weeping, Rhaegar crouched and spoke quiet words. None could hear over the gale, but the lad's trembling eased. Near midnight, the storm at last spent its fury. Cloud tatter scudded east, revealing a moon thin as a blind girl's smile. The sea witch wallowed in exhausted swells. Pumps clattered to keep her belly from flooding. Every plank, sail, and human soul aboard felt scraped raw. Yet the mast still stood, and the hull had not sprung fatal leak. Captain Scolari spat twice for luck, then trod the deck counting scars as though each new gouge were an honor. Rhaegar found LYANNA crouched beside a broken barrel, binding her scraped palm with strip of linen. He knelt. "Let me." She allowed him to wind the cloth. His fingers were deft, warm despite the cold. She studied the lines at the corners of his eyes, new, etched tonight. "You kept your head," she said, "and you kept the prow from splintering by sheer will," he replied, knotting the bandage. "When did the wolf learn to command the sea?" "The wolf does not," she said, flexing fingers, "but she remembers the river in spring flood, and spring flood answers to nothing. Might be I should fear you, my lady. Might be you already do." She rose, brushed rain from her cloak. Far aft the helmsman called a sighting, distant lanterns, low to the water, Sisterton's outer markers. LYANNA exhaled. Land. They reached the narrow harbor at dawn. Sisterton crouched on a spit of shingle and half-ruined seawall, its wooden palisades silvered by frost. Smoke drifted from thatched roofs. Gulls wheeled, shrieking. Garland Scolari agreed to linger half a day for repairs, then sail on to White Harbor. Payment had been arranged by Alanis through tangled promissory notes redeemable at the Iron Bank. Scolari was anxious, but greed won, reluctant to test fate by rejecting coin with Bravosi ink. LYANNA and Rhaegar disembarked as soon as gangplank hit slimy stone. Sisterton smelled of fish guts and wood smoke, of brine-rotted nets drying on racks. The locals eyed them with plain suspicion. Travel this late in season meant smugglers or fools. LYANNA kept her hood up. Rhaegar tugged his cloak to conceal sword and harp. They found a stable that rented shaggy northern garrons, compact, sturdy horses bred for marsh tracks. The stable master, a lantern-jawed woman missing 2 fingers, named her price in coin and silence. 2 silver stags and the promise they'd ask no questions about her other clients. LYANNA paid. Coin clinked into a clay jar. They rode out before midday, following a muddy track that soon joined the north coastal road. The sky cleared to brittle blue. Patches of snow lingered in ditches. frost-glazed brown heather. Rhaegar rode ahead, cloak flapping like a soot-stained banner. LYANNA kept pace beside, pulses matching hoofbeats. In the quiet, she felt again the strange new braid between them. Duty twined with something warmer. Not yet love, perhaps, but kin to it, tempered by shared peril. They camped that night beneath twisted pines, overlooking the bay called the Bight. A crescent moon reflected off dark water miles distant. Rhaegar unpacked his harp. Though strings were salt-stiff, he coaxed a tune gentle as snowfall. LYANNA listened while sharpening her dirk steel rasping whetstone in countermelody. When music ceased, he spoke. In King's Landing songs claim I stole you. In Winterfell they say I butchered your kin. Truth is a maimed hound now, limping. She touched the wolf's headpin at her throat. Truth survives, if fed. We will feed it with deeds. Will deeds undo the dead? No. She slid blade back into sheath. But they may keep more from joining them. They lay on bedrolls opposite the dying fire. Pine boughs brushed starlight. LYANNA thought she heard distant howls across the heath, wolves or wind. She dreamt of Ned's face half-shadowed by icicles, lips moving but words lost in the roar of a river thawing. When she woke before dawn, Rhaegar was already up, packing. His eyes were distant, but when they met hers, a spark returned. They rode 3 days, skirted the Wolf's Wood, and at last glimpsed White Harbor's white stone walls, rising where the White Knife met the sea. The city bustled despite cold. Cranes loading trade barges, fishwives hawking cod, Mandarine guards in turquoise cloaks tending the gate. LYANNA felt her heart drum. To walk openly in Northman lands again felt both blessing and threat. At the eastern gatehouse, a sergeant halted them. His gray beard bristled. Names. Thy rivers, LYANNA said smoothly, lifting fake Brevosi warrant, Alanis handiwork, marking them wool trade factors. My brother Rowan, Torti. The sergeant squinted at Rhaegar's face. South Ron, Tortisenoi. Etionosh. With coin. Rhaegar supplied, voice plain. He produced a purse, silver chimed. The guard shrugged, waved them through. Inside, White Harbor unfolded in tiers. River wharves below. Merchant district, mid-slope. Newcastle, crowning the bluff like a frost-capped helm. Whalers shouted. Bakers sprinkled honeyed oatcakes. Sept bells rang midday. Yet LYANNA felt tension beneath bustle. Guards doubled at crossroads, faces wary. Word of southern intrigues must have drifted this far. They stabled their horses at an inn called the Silver Trout and took a modest room. After a shared plate of eel pie, they ventured toward Newcastle. But as they passed a narrow lane near the wolf's den, a voice hissed from shadow. LYANNA started. She froze. From behind a stack of salted cod barrels stepped a tall youth wrapped in Night's Watch gray-black. Snow dusted his shoulders. Eyes steel blue locked on hers. Benjen. Her throat closed. She glanced at Rhaegar, who slipped hand to sword. Stand down, she whispered. To her brother, I did not expect you. Nor I you, sister. Benjen's gaze flicked to Rhaegar, suspicion smoldering. Reports said you were dead. And you, prince, fell on the trident. Yet here you stand, skulking under false names. Yes, so suddenly. Alive, thanks to each other. Walk with us. Not here. Benjen hesitated, then nodded. They cut through crooked alleys until they found an abandoned net loft above the old granary. Dust motes spun in pale shafts of light. Benjen shut the door. Speak, he said, crossing arms. LYANNA recounted everything from the Tower of Joy escape to Bravos, Storm, Sisterton. She kept voice steady, though old terror resurfaced when describing Aerys's wildfire plots. Benjen listened, jaw working. When she finished, he approached her, placed calloused hands on her shoulders. "Gods be praised, you're alive." He pulled her into a bone-crushing hug. She clung, eyes stinging. Rhaegar watched, expression unreadable. When Benjen released her, he turned. "And you, your highness, what deception keeps that golden crown of hair black?" "The deception that shields us both," Rhaegar said. "Robert hunts us. If he learns Lyanna lives, he will brand her traitor to justify his claim." Benjen snorted. "He loved her. Love bends before power," Rhaegar replied. "Your brother Ned may curb Robert's wrath, but courtiers thirst for scapegoats. Already Raven's name, Lyanna mother to a dragon spawn, though no babe was ever quickened." Benjen's gaze softened toward Lyanna, then hardened back at Rhaegar. "Suppose I believe your innocence. What seek you in White Harbor?" "Passage upriver," Lyanna answered. "Then north to the wall. We ask your escort and sanctuary." Benjen exhaled through nose. He paced across warped boards. Cold winds rise beyond the wall. Rangers vanish. Wildlings flee south, babbling of pale shadows. The Lord Commander needs allies, not fugitives. "Nan, Pama, give us honest names," Lyanna said. "I will stand before Jean Mormont and swear any oath he requires." "You would join the watch?" Benjen frowned. "No," she said, "but I will stand as witness to what I've seen. A realm so busy crowning conquerors it forgets winter's teeth." Rhaegar spoke softly. "If darkness stirs in the far north, a king's duty begins there, not on a throne." Benjen stopped. For the first time, a faint spark of curiosity replaced suspicion. "You speak of duty like a star. Perhaps exile teaches faster than comfort," Rhaegar said. Benjen considered, then nodded once. "Very well. I leave at dawn with 5 men for Castle Black. 2 extra saddles will not be noticed." Lyanna felt relief rush through. "Thank you, little brother." He gave her a rueful smile. "Almost taller than you now, wolf sister. But I owe you for those bruises in the yard." They parted so Benjen could gather men and supplies. Lyanna and Rhaegar returned to the Silver Trout. In their room, she slumped on the bed, exhaustion finally seeping into bones. Rhaegar sat beside, silent a long time. "Your brother's loyalty is steel," he said. "Starks do not bend easily." She looked at him. "Will you?" "When the wall looms." "I will not bend," he said softly, "but I may bow. To truth, to necessity." She reached for his hand. "Whatever waits in that cold, we face it together." 7 days' ride carried them through snow-patched forests and over wind-scoured hills, following the White Knife's twisting course. Benjen led, his night's watch cloak flapping like crow wings. His rangers, Hallis, Dauber, Joth, and red-haired Perwyn, eyed Rhaegar with wariness but spoke little. Evenings, campfires burned low. Frosty air silenced tongues. Lyanna shared tales of Winterfell's harvest feasts to lighten gloom, and Rhaegar played soft tunes that turned wolf and crow heads alike. On the 4th night, Hallis returned from scouting, pale and breathless. "Tracks," he rasped. "Off-footed, clawed. Not man, not bear." He unrolled a scrap of leather rubbed with chalk to show elongated prints. Benjen's brow furrowed. White shadows indeed. Lyanna felt chill not from wind. Rhaegar examined drawing. The step length. Too long for a child, too narrow for a bear. "Dead men walk again," Dauber muttered. "Old Nan's tales." Benjen ordered double watch, torches kept ready. Lyanna woke at intervals, hand on dirk, imagining pale eyes blinking beyond treeline. Dawn revealed no threat, only silent glades white with hoarfrost, tracks already erased by drifting snow. But the rangers' murmurs grew. The road climbed onto the King's Road proper, stone mileposts crusted with ice marked distance. At Mole's town they resupplied with salt pork and lamp oil. The crooked hamlet bustled less than usual. Flowers of ice sealed many shutters, but also fear. Villagers spoke of hunters who vanished north of Queen's Crown, of frozen corpses found standing as though alive. Benjen listened grimly, bought extra fire arrows. 2 days later, the wall thundered into view, a colossal cliff of blue-white ice stretching east to west as far as sight dared. Shadow cloaked its base, but the summit burned gold under afternoon sun. Rhaegar reined in, breath-catching. "Even songs fail," he whispered. LYANNA felt dwarfed, bones and resolve alike shrinking, yet a fierce pride welled. This was the limit of men's kingdoms. The edge where wolves kept vigil. Benjen's horse stamped impatiently. Castle Black lies beyond that ridge. Welcome to the end of the world. Ravens circled above the gatehouse as they approached. Black brothers on the walkway peered down. Horns boomed, 2 blasts for returning rangers. The gate creaked open, spilling ground-level daylight into the dim tunnel bored through ice. Inside the courtyard, men in patch-worked black gathered. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont emerged, broad as a bear, cloak of snow-speckled raven feathers sweeping the dirt. Benjen dismounted and knelt. Rangers returned. Lord Commander. Mormont's sharp gaze swept party, lingering on LYANNA's face, then Rhaegar's. "These are no brothers. They are guests," Benjen said. "And my kin." Murmur rippled. Yor grunted. Kin's rarely dull. Speak names." LYANNA lowered hood. Gasps whispered among onlookers. Lyanna stalked. Mormont's eyes widened. All northern bards had sung her dirge. "By the 7, not dead then." "No." She stepped forward, voice steady. "I fled south in secret, aided by Prince Rhaegar, to escape King Aerys' madness. Now we return to warn you winter rises worse than before." Rhaegar stepped beside her, removing hood. Black hair framed highborn features some present recognized from distant tourneys. A hush fell. Jorah's mustache bristled. "Prince, I claim no title here," Rhaegar said. "Only the duty of a man who has seen kingdoms burn and wishes none to burn again." Yor studied them long. At last he barked, "We talk in my solar. Others, back to work." The courtyard dispersed under his glare. In the solar, warmth from an iron brazier pushed back, chill. Ravens croaked from perches overhead. Jorah poured mulled ale. "Tell me everything," he said. They did. By the time Rhaegar described the claw tracks Hallis found, Jorah's scowl could have cracked stone. "We've lost 4 patrols this month," he rumbled. "Find their corpses standing, eyes blue, flesh white as snow, swords near useless unless fire-forged." Rhaegar leaned forward. "Then let us ride with your best trackers. We bring obsidian, torches." Jorah snorted. "Dragonglass rare as summer snow here." "I have some," Rhaegar said. He unbuckled a pouch, withdrew 3 arrowheads of black glass, gift from the red mountains of Dorne. Jorah turned one over, thinking. Not enough, but Craster's keep may hold more. Old Craster hoards strange relics. Lyanna frowned. "We ride there." "Dangerous path," Jorah admitted. "But if white shadows mass, we need every shard." "Then we ride," she said. Jorah eyed her, then Benjen. "This your doing?" "My sister's," Benjen replied. Mormont grunted. "Stubborn blood." He stood. "Very well. At dawn, Prince, Lady, join my ranging." Nundshire. That night, they lodged in a spare chamber above the rookery. Outside, wind keened like a hungry babe. LYANNA sat on a bench near frosted window, while Rhaegar tuned harp with care to not wake sleeping ravens. Soft notes rose, blending with wind. "I had pictured returning to Winterfell first," she said quietly, "seeing father's tomb, kneeling before mother's grave. But the wall called louder. 'Winterfell will wait,' he answered, still plucking. 'Stone endures beyond lives.'" She glanced at him. Candlelight caught the curve of his jaw, the dark fall of hair. "Do you regret this path?" He set the harp aside, crossed to her, knelt. "I regret only the blood spilled by my family's pride, and mine. But walking beside you feels redemptive." Her breath hitched. "We tread ice and shadows, yet you speak of heat. Fire lives in the unlikely." His hand brushed hers. She turned palm to interlace fingers. "Tomorrow may kill us," she whispered. "Tomorrow always might," he said. He kissed her knuckles. She guided his lips higher, to palm, wrist, then cheek. At last, mouth met mouth. The taste was salt, cold air, trembling hope. Ravens rustled overhead, but made no comment. They parted only when footsteps sounded outside the door. Jor's ravenkeeper bringing fresh coal. Rhaegar eased back to bench. LYANNA's pulse hammered, but she folded hands in lap. The keeper delivered coal, bowed, left. Rhaegar exhaled a smile ghosting. The realm would howl if it saw. "Let it," she murmured. Before dawn, rangers gathered in the courtyard. Mormont, Benjen, Corinne Halfhand from the Shadow Tower, and 8 others. LYANNA wrapped herself in heavy black wool. Rhaegar donned piecemeal Night's Watch spare armor. Horses snorted plumes, torches sputtered. They rode through the gate in the wall, down the icy ramp switchbacking to the forest floor. Pines closed overhead like ribs of some ancient leviathan. Snow fell thick. The party pushed east, skirting frozen lakes where faint moon mirrored between reeds. Tracks, not deer, crisscrossed banks, narrow, two-pronged, as though a man shod in claws walked there. On the second night they found a dead elk, spine snapped, eyes gone, flesh untouched by scavengers. Frost rimed its nostrils. A ring of disturbed snow encircled carcass. Corinne swore. "They hunt closer each moon." Yor dispatched Hallis to scout ahead. Hallis returned pale. Firelight beyond ridge. Craster's keep reeked before it appeared. Pig dung, smoke, unwashed bodies. The wildling lord let them in grudgingly, eyeing LYANNA's cloak with interest too keen. She suppressed urge to knife him. Women, wives, and daughters both scurried barefoot in frozen mud, bellies round or gaunt. Inside the long hall, Craster offered sour goat's milk and tales of shadows with ice for spears. For 3 obsidian arrowheads and half a skin of wine, he surrendered a sack of ancient dragonglass, daggers he'd unearthed at the fist of the first man. That night, snow hammered the keep. Benjen shared a bunk room with LYANNA and Rhaegar, standing guard while they slept, honor clashing with suspicion. In pre-dawn gloom, LYANNA dreamt again of the direwolf crowned in roses. This time, its eyes burned blue, and when it howled the sound shook ice from rafters. She woke, heart racing, to find Rhaegar staring at ceiling, breath clouding. "I heard it too," he whispered. They departed at first light, unwilling to linger among Craster's sharp-toothed hospitality. 4 miles east, Hallis signaled from slope ahead. The party approached under cover of firs. LYANNA peered through branches, and her blood chilled. 9 shapes stood in a ring around a frozen island. They were men once. Tattered black cloaks, bits of leather armor, rangers missing once, but their flesh gleamed pale as moonlit milk. Eyes burning a cold cerulean. In their hands long shards of ice shimmered like crystal spears. They moved not at all, as if carved. Yor muttered oath. He knocked. Dragonglass tipped arrow to bow. Rhaegar did likewise. LYANNA drew her dirk of obsidian. Corinne signaled, "Advance from 3 flanks." They crept onto lake. Ice creaked under weight. 20 yards. 10. The nearest dead thing's head tilted, sensing. A hiss escaped its gray lips. Blue light flared in its eyes. Your loosed arrow. It streaked midnight black, struck creature's chest. For heartbeat nothing. Then the corpse shuddered and cracked, fissures racing outward like spiderweb, until whole form exploded into shards that melted before hitting ice. The others turned, raising spears. Rhaegar's arrow felled another. Lyanna lunged at a third, ducking thrust of icy spear, drove obsidian dirk through its throat. It shrieked, sound like glass scraping bone, and burst apart. She spun, searching for next threat. Rangers clashed, screams echoing. One white seized Dobber, lifting him by throat. Lyanna sprinted, leapt, slashed its arm. It dropped Ranger, swung at her. She rolled, came up behind, stabbed spine. Crack. Shatter. A sudden deeper chill swept lake. Cold so fierce breath froze mid-exhale. Lyanna saw frost plume from Rhaegar's lashes. Beyond the ring, through swirling snow, shape emerged. Tall, gaunt, armored in ice that caught morning light with sinister beauty. A white walker. Its eyes burned blue bale fire. It carried a sword forged of solid frost that steamed as if alive. Corinne charged. The walker parried with fluid grace, its blade ringing unnaturally. Corinne's steel snapped like glass. The walker plunged frost sword through Ranger's chest. Corinne convulsed, fell. Rhaegar roared, knocked arrow, loosed. Obsidian tip caught Walker's shoulder, cracked but did not shatter. Creature staggered, fixed gaze on Rhaegar now. Lyanna sprinted, dirk in reverse grip. The walker swung at Rhaegar. He ducked, rolling. Lyanna slashed its side. The blade bit. Spiderweb cracks bloomed, but Walker howled and backhanded her savagely. She flew, crashed on ice, breath knocked out. Benjen hurled torch. Flame brushed Walker's cloak. It recoiled, hissing. Yor bellowed orders. Surround with fire. Rangers jabbed torches, hemming Walker onto thin ice. Rhaegar, bleeding from brow, seized one of Craster's longer dragon-glass daggers. He locked eyes with Lyanna, silent promise, and lunged. The walker raised sword, but Rhaegar slipped under swing, drove dragonglass into creature's heart. For a breath, nothing happened. Then cracks raced. Frost armor splintered. Blue light flared bright enough to blind. Explosion of shards. Shockwave roared outward, knocking men onto their backs. Silence. Lyanna pushed upright, ears ringing. Where Walker fell lay only a puddle of melting ice and a faint haze. Rhaegar stood trembling, dagger hilt in hand. She staggered to him, grasped shoulders. His eyes shone with mingled terror and exhilaration. Yor lumbered up, face thunderstruck. Gods help us. The tales are true. No. Rhaegar rasped. They were mercy compared to truth. This is worse. Lyanna sheathed dirk. We must bring word south. Yor nodded grimly. We ride hard. The wall must be warned. Then Winterfell. Then 7 save us King's Landing. Benjen's stare found Rhaegar. Your crown waits after winter. Rhaegar looked at Lyanna. No. The realm's crown lies here, in holding this line. He knelt, scooped handful of melting walker ice, let droplets fall. Let Summerhall's ghosts rest. I will be a different fire. Lyanna placed hand atop his. And I, the winter to temper it. They burned Corinne's body, lest it rise again. Flames guttered in snow, smoke rising like torn banner. Then they mounted and rode back for Castle Black at breakneck pace. For 5 days they scarcely slept. At Wall's shadow Jorah sent 5 fastest ravens, 1 to Winterfell, one to White Harbor, one to the Eyrie, one to Old Town Citadel, one south to King's Landing. Each bore message: the dead walk, dragon glass kills, send aid. Lyanna watched the last raven vanish into pearl sky. "Do you trust Robert Baratheon to heed?" she asked. "Robert loves war," Benjen said. "But will he love a war against foes who do not bleed?" Rhaegar turned to Lyanna. "If he will not heed the raven, we make him heed a wolf and a dragon together. A wolf in winter fur, and a dragon without fire," Jor said dryly. "Mayhap enough." That night, Castle Black buzzed. Brothers hammered arrowheads of dragon glass, forged by Smith Donal Noy using Rhaegar's designs to socket glass into iron casings. Supplies tallied: oil, pitch, dry wood. Ravens cooed restlessly, sensing storm. Lyanna sought the top of the wall. Climbing that rickety wooden cage made her stomach twist. But the view from atop stunned the breath from her lungs. The world spread endless. South, wreathed in silver moonlight, woods and hills. North, a sea of jagged white under swirling cloud. Wind howled like a lamentation for all souls drowned in snow. She pulled cloak tight. Rhaegar joined her, offering warm wine. They sipped slowly. "If I died tomorrow," he said, "would the song end or only change key?" She met his gaze. "Songs never end. They find new singers. Then sing with me, Lyanna Stark. Not in tune with courts or crowns. Sing with ice and fire. No tune, dimish, pasiyan." She inhaled the wind. "I will." He slipped a ring onto her glove. A thin band of dragon glass, polished midnight smooth, set with a single chipped sapphire. "Forged from the weapon that spared my life," he said. "May it shield yours." She let gloved fingers close around his. "And I have only a promise to offer." She leaned in, brushed lips to his ear. "I will never again run from Beneath their feet, the wall groaned. Ancient ice stirring. Far north, faint as heartbeat, a horn blast echoed. Once, then twice, then a third time. They froze. Third blast meant the others. Benjen's voice rose from the tower below, calling alarms. Lyanna met Rhaegar's eyes. Fear flashed, then resolve, steel bright. She drew her obsidian dirk. He unslung, bow. In the distance, blue lights flickered atop dark ridges, like cold stars fallen to earth. Shadows moved, tall and inexorable, advancing through forests. The wall had stood 8,000 years. Tonight, it would be tested by foe older still. But on its parapet stood a wolf crowned in frost, and a dragon cloaked in shadow, hands clasped around weapons of black glass and stubborn hope. Lyanna looked north and felt the storm inside her meet the one marching across snows. She bared her teeth in silent snarl. "Let winter come," she whispered. And winter came. When she touched up. Wind screamed across the crown of the wall like iron filings across a whetstone, stripping warmth from flesh and hope alike. Lyanna could taste its fury, sharp, metallic, on her tongue as she leaned over the ice-slick crenel, peering into the churning dark. Far below, torches guttered on the ground level like fireflies trapped beneath frosted glass, their flickers smothered by drifts piling quick as sand in an hourglass. The tunnel gates were already sealed. The lift platform rattled and shuddered behind her, overloaded with barrels of pitch, bales of dry straw, coils of rub, all the desperate provisions Castle Black could muster on a night when the living world seemed to contract to a single thread of light. Rhaegar stood at the Merlon to her right, knocking one of the black glass arrowheads salvaged from Craster's hoard. His face, normally as calm as still water, was now drawn taut, cheeks hollowed by wind, lashes rimed with ice. But his hands did not shake. The string of Mormont's heavy longbow bent under his jaw, the obsidian tip resting lightly against his pale forefinger. He turned his head just enough to meet her eyes, and in the flash of a lightning-white gust, she read the vow there, that whatever climbed this frozen cliff would meet the last prince of dragon's blood before it touched her. Below them, the first pale shapes emerged from the tree line. Lank shadows limned in blue radiance, eyes glowing like lost embers of a dead heart. They moved with eerie coordination, not marching but gliding. White cloaks streaming behind skeletal limbs. 100? 2. Counting proved impossible. The night itself seemed to fracture around their presence, and behind them came the dead. Shambling rag dolls wrapped in scavenged black, small folk furs, broken mail. Hundreds, 9, thousands. A tide of silence that drowned even the feral wind. Jean Mormont's voice bellowed from the western tower. "Archers, loose at will." His order crashed across the parapet, shattering the hush, and a twang and thrum of bowstrings answered. Fire arrows streaked outward, their bright tails carving temporary constellations in the gloom. Where fletching took blue-lit flesh, whites convulsed and burned, collapsing into sparks of flame that hissed against snow. But when the arrows struck the tall ones, the true others, the shafts snapped, tips splintering like kindling. Those shimmering figures seemed to drift through the firestorm untouched, drawing frost in their wake. One lifted an arm. Shards of ice whirled up, congealing into a spear. It flicked the weapon skyward. LYANNA tracked its impossible arc, breath halted, as it spun end over end toward the parapet's midsection. A ranger toppled backward, skull split by frozen glass. His body slammed the icewalk hard enough to craze the surface. No blood spilled. His heart had ceased before impact, the heat stolen from him in a heartbeat. LYANNA felt a hot sting behind her eyes, but forced calm, drawing the obsidian dirk from her belt. She whispered a Winterfell prayer to the old gods. No words, only resolve, and scanned for any breach. A horn blast rose from the east stairwell. 2 quick notes, urgent. She whirled. A cluster of shapes scrabbled on the ice wall 20 yards along. The dead climbing with frozen fingers that found purchase in cracks where even crampons failed. Yora's men poured pitch, but the shrieking wind blew flames sideways. Droplets flared out before touching whites. One creature clambered past the fire line, teeth bared in parchment skin. Rhaegar's arrow met its temple. The head shattered, body cascading away. But more replaced it like maggots in a wound. LYANNA sprinted along the parapet, boots skidding. Her cloak snapped and billowed, a wolf-gray banner in the storm. Benjen met her midway, wielding a torch wound in oil-soaked cloth. They breached the ice, he shouted. "We hold here, or we die." His breath came in clouds. Together they reached the knot of rangers struggling against the first overwall. A young recruit swung a rusty sword, too slow. A white seized him, jaw clamping into his throat. LYANNA lunged, dirk flashing, and split the white's neck clean through. It burst into a flurry of hoarfrost that sparkled sickeningly pretty. "Dragon glass only," she barked, shoving the recruit. Eyes wide, blood frothing at his collarbone. "Back toward those with torches. Find heat, lad." Benjen shouldered her aside, hooking his torch into a fresh climber's face. Flame roared. Rank ice musk flooded the air as it burned from within, clattering into pieces. Behind them, Rhaegar sent arrow after arrow into the gloom, each shot guided by musicians' instinct for rhythm. Yet for every walker toppled to crystalline ruin, 2 more seemed to emerge from swirling snow. The edge of the forest glowed an eerie cobalt, as though dawn had twisted northward from some alien sun. And the wall, old as memory, began to groan, not creak, but a resonant moan that vibrated through boots into bones. The frost fire! Shior bellowed again, voice cracking. Rangers, ignite the frost fire! Lyanna had only heard of the concoction in whispered laments. Wildfire's pale cousin, rumored buried with the Mad King's long-dead alchemists. But Donalnoy had found 3 barrels sealed and laid in some forgotten vault beneath Eastwatch. They were not meant for siege. They were meant for burial, he'd said with a grim smile. And now Jor meant to bury walkers. At mid-wall, a clutch of brothers tipped the first barrel over the side. White slurry cascaded in a frozen waterfall. It hit the army below with the hiss of hot iron plunged in snow. Except the temperature flipped. Blue flames sheeted outward, devouring whites in a pulsing ring. The creature's screams were hollow, wind chime screams, severed from any breath. Lyanna swallowed bile. The fire's glow leached color, turning crimson torches to gray. Where it touched the trees, their sap froze so violently trunks exploded like thunderclaps. The living fire carved a moat of glass at the forest's edge, momentarily halting the advance. But the others walked through frostfire unaffected. The flames coiled around them as part of their cloak, wreathing them in deeper chill. One raised a hand, and from the sky fell a spear of solidified mist, driving into the wall's face 20 feet below the parapet. With a thunderous crack, the spear exploded, gouging a crater that spattered shards of ice upward like shrapnel. Lyanna felt a sting across her cheek. Blood trickled warm, too bright beneath the moonlight. She pivoted. Rhaegar was bleeding too. A line across his brow. He wiped it away, eyes blazing. Then he drew the long dragon-glass dagger he'd used to slay the walker at the lake. He kissed the flat of the blade, murmured something in High Valyrian that sounded like home and ashes, then sprinted toward the lift tower. Lyanna's stomach lurched. "What are you?" "Trust me," he called, vanishing down the inner stair. She wanted to chase, but another surge pressed her. Dead arms heaved over the lip. A white with a child's braided scalp grabbed her boot. Benyon hacked it free. She ducked under a spear of cracked steel, drove obsidian up through a white's jaw and out its crown. Ice spiders danced across her gauntlet. Her fingers went numb. She jerked the blade free before the corpse could shatter and trap it. A horn sounded once more, this time from the base of the lift tower. She glanced, saw the lift platform descending with jarring speed, ropes whining like tortured cats. Rhaegar rode it down, hair whipping. He must be mad. The tunnel gate was locked from within, unless he planned to open it. Heart battering her ribs, Lyanna fought free of melee and sprinted across the ice walk, leaping gaps where dislodged stones left punishing voids. She shouldered past Dauber, face blackened with frostfire ash, and slid down the squealing chain ladder onto the tower's inner landing. The lift already shuddered to a stop below, skeleton of wood half buried in drifting snow. She scrambled down, boots barely catching each rung. At bottom she arrived breathless, landing in knee-high powder. Rhaegar was already trudging toward the inner gate, dragging the half-melted barrel of frostfire behind him. Its lead casing had ruptured, luminous vapors curled around his legs. One mistilt and the stuff would consume him. She seized his arm. "If that spills." "It must," he said. His eyes shone not fevered but resolved. "The fire does not touch them because it is cold, but we can break the wall around them. Collapse the ice, bury the army. Bravos taught me tides. When a levee fails, you let the sea claim its own. You'll bring the wall down on yourself." "On all of us," he agreed, "unless we time it." I open the gate, roll the barrel into the tunnel, ignite as the first wave pushes through. The blast and their own cold will carve a wound. The wall's weight above will seal it. We retreat to the second gate and pray. Prayers, Lyanna thought. were fickle as spring sunshine. "You need aid," she said. He shook his head. "Get Jor. Rally the brothers past the second gate. When you see blue fire, drop the portcullis. No Johnny's. I won't leave you." His gloved hands rose, cupping her cracking cheeks. Snowflakes melted on his skin. "You swore to face storms. Trust that I face this one for us both." Her throat burned. She kissed him, taste of salt and cold. Then she pivoted, sprinting back to the ice stair. She had no tears left. The wind had stolen them hours ago. Above, the battle raged. More dead reached the parapet. She shouted until her voice broke, gathering rangers to her side. Benjen appeared, blood spattering his face across a soot mask. "Where's the prince?" he rasped. "In the tunnel," she said. "We must clear back, now." Understanding flickered. He wasted no breath. Together they grabbed men, pulling them from the wall stairs. Some protested, others obeyed dumbly. The courtyard seethed with frantic motion, brothers dragging wounded, ravens flapping in their cages. Yor Mormont, still on the walkway, locked eyes with LYANNA as she burst through a side gate into the top hall. She signaled, one finger raised, then clenched into fist. Explosion. His jaw tightened. Without hesitation, he ordered retreat to the second gate. The inner hall was chaos. Torches toppled, benches overturned. Brothers formed a ragged line before the rearmost portcullis, dragging barrels of pitch across the entry to form a barricade. LYANNA vaulted over them, scanning for the lever controlling the winch. Benjen found it first. Rusted iron bar half encased in ice. He hacked at the ice with axe head until it cracked loose. From the tunnel, a thrum rose, a vibration that rattled teeth. Footfalls? No, an unearthly hum, like a glacier groaning under sudden thaw. She imagined Rhaegar rolling that barrel into the pitch-black corridor, alone save for swirling cold that hungered for heat. A distant metallic clang echoed, the massive gate at the outer face opening. LYANNA's breath caught. It scraped, shrieked, then fell silent. She waited for the bump of whites colliding, for shrills. Instead, silence long enough to curdle marrow, then a soft crack, like a sapling snapping under snow. Another, then a roar of rushing air, louder than in any storm. Blue light, blinding, pure, sputtered beneath the archway. It raced up the tunnel like inverted flame, devouring darkness. Ice walls flashed translucent. For an instant, she saw silhouettes within, as though the wall itself had become glass. Walkers striding, whites tumbling. The tiny dark figure of Rhaegar crouched by the barrel, flint strike. Then the world convulsed. Tunnel vomited light, staggering brother and Stark alike. LYANNA felt heatless fire rake her face, saw Benjen thrown backward into pitch casks. She flung up an arm as shards of volatile frost exploded into the hall, carving furrows through timber. The tunnel ceiling fractured. A roar deeper than thunder swallowed all sound, and the floor jerked as though some leviathan slammed its back against the wall. "Portcullis!" Benjen shouted, voice muffled by the cacophony. LYANNA staggered to the lever. The chain squealed. The gates began to descend, but so slowly, too slowly. Cloud of fractured ice and sapphire-tinged vapor surged through the opening like a living beast. Within the maelstrom, shapes thrashed, whites stripping to bone, walkers breaking into prisms. Yet amid them, a single dark body stumbled. Rhaegar, cloak aflame, with blue tongues that seared cloth to ash. He ran, blinded, toward the hall. LYANNA screamed wordlessly. She slammed her shoulder into the lever. It groaned another foot. Rhaegar cleared the swirling miasma, tripped on debris, rolled. Benjen was there, holding him upright. Together they flung him past the portcullis frame as LYANNA wrenched the lever the last inch. The iron grate crashed down behind them, just as the bright torrent slammed against it. Frostfire swirled, curling through bars like desperate fingers before guttering. The hall shook again. Ice dust rained from the ceiling. Retreating rangers braced for collapse. Timbers moaned but held. Gradually the roar faded, leaving only ragged breaths and the distant, echoing crackle where the fire guttered out. LYANNA knelt beside Rhaegar. His skin shone slick with sweat, hair singed back to patchy silver where dye had burned away. But his eyes were open, searching. She clasped his hand. Alive. He tried to speak, coughed instead. Steam drifted from his clothes. She pressed her forehead to his, ignoring the stink of burnt wool. Jor lumbered forward, face ash-streaked, beard rimed. He stared into the tunnel's mouth. Beyond, only blackness remained, edged in a haze of ghostly mist. Collapsed halfway back, he judged. No breach further by the sound, gods old and new. Did it stop them? Benjen asked. For tonight, Jor said. Maybe longer, but the wall bleeds. He cocked an ear. Steady wind whistled through unseen cracks. We must reinforce before dawn or cold, and time will finish what the walkers began. LYANNA nodded, rising unsteadily. Then work. She glanced down. Her dirk still dripped melted frost, pooling like tears on stone. Through the rest of that endless night, they toiled. Brothers and freedfolk hammered ice blocks into gaps, poured water that froze instant to seal seams. Donal Noy rigged iron supports scavenged from the smithy. Above, on the parapet, survivors hurled the last of the frostfire on retreating whites, breaking the foe's push. By sunrise, the wall still stood, scarred, steaming but upright. Snow turned gentle as feathers when dawn bled pale rose across the eastern sky. The battlefield below looked still, littered with shattered crystal and charred bones. Where the frostfire moat had burned, a smooth mirror now reflected the morning. No walkers stirred. The forest edge lay silent. LYANNA shuffled along the parapet, exhaustion a chain round her neck. Rhaegar walked beside her, leaning lightly on a spear shaft as cane. They paused where the wall cracked, overlooking the new ravine carved by the blast. From here she could see the tunnel's caved entry, a maw of broken ice fused into glass. Will they return? She asked in a voice hoarse as Corvid's. Yes, he answered softly. Winter always returns, but so will spring. She managed a tired smile. You sound like a Northman. Perhaps exile makes us all Northerners eventually. He turned, brushing knuckles across her bruised cheek. You faced the very end and did not falter. Nor you. She laced her fingers through his. Below, a wolf howled somewhere beyond the tree line. Lonely, triumphant. Another answered eastward. She took the sound as omen. Benjen approached, a parchment in hand. Raven from Winterfell, he said. Sent before the lines went down. Lord Stark rallies bannermen. He rides north in a moon's turn, bringing grain and men. LYANNA's heart squeezed. Eddard, she whispered. He still sits in Winterfell. For now. Robert's court squabbles over small folk taxes. Ned pleaded leave. Benjen's mouth twitched in grim amusement. I suspect he rides faster than ravens admit. And Robert? Rhaegar asked. Benjen's blue eyes hardened. The raven says the king feasts and hunts. He plans no march without proof. Proof, LYANNA repeated. She gestured to the field of shattered glass. What is this if not proof? Kings see what they choose, Benjen said. Rhaegar exhaled. Then we must carry truth south ourselves. Jeor Mormont joined them, boots crunching frost. You talk of leaving my wall. I'd clap you in chains if chains could hold you, but they cannot. He scratched the raven, perched on his shoulder, old, ragged, black as pitch. I need allies, not hostages. If you go, carry my words. We will, LYANNA promised. You have my father's word through me, and mine, Rhaegar said. Jeor nodded. Then prepare. I'll spare Benjen and 10 volunteers to escort you to Moat Cailin. Past that, the swamps will protect you if the gods allow. Manis, Benjen smirked. The Crenogmen treat intruders rougher than whites. Let us hope they like wolves, LYANNA returned. They descended to the courtyard to plan. Rhaegar insisted on retrieving every remaining shard of dragonglass from storage and dividing it. Half stayed at the wall, half traveled south. Donalnoy set to forging small daggers and arrowheads, while the limited coal lasted. Gilly, Craster's timid daughter-wife smuggled in by Samwell Tarly, helped wrap supplies, her babe fussing at her breast. The moat light in her eyes, fearful but stubborn, reminded LYANNA of all the small folk who would suffer if Robert kept feasting. By third nightfall, preparations were done. 30 horses waited at the outer yard, breath pluming in silver banners. The sky had cleared, stars crowded the dark with cold radiance. Riders black and gray gathered, brothers wearing patched cloaks over heavier furs. LYANNA in a stark cloak newly sewn with flights of feathers for warmth. Rhaegar in black boiled leather fitted by castle tailors, who did not know they dressed a dragon. Jeor clasped arms with each before the open gate. To LYANNA, he said, "Tell your lord father the wall still remembers his name. Eddard of House Stark, who sent grain when others sent excuses, and he will remember yours," she answered. To Rhaegar, Jeor's gaze turned wan. "If I could keep you, I would, Prince. A harp's voice carries no weight against the dead, but the man behind it does." Rhaegar bowed low. "When winter breaks, I will return. A harp is loudest when strung with hope." Jeor grunted approval. "Go, then, and may the Mother's mercy follow." Nandaru. The gates creaked outward. The column filed through. Benjen set pace, steady, not hurried, but mindful of distance. They left the wall's looming silhouette behind, slipping into a land called the Gift, fields buried under snow, but safer than the haunted forest. Behind them, the wall's top glow receded into a thin line, then vanished, leaving only stars and open dark. During the first watch, LYANNA rode beside Rhaegar. He hummed under his breath, soft snatch of lullaby, and the night felt less vast. After hours, the road dipped into a shallow valley. There, torchlight flickered ahead. A low stone hole ringed by earthen berms. The hunters of the Flint clan had built it generations ago for winter drives. Now the Night's Watch kept caches inside. They unsaddled, set sentries. LYANNA sat by a meager fire, rubbing her horse's nose. Rhaegar approached, carrying a steaming cup. He knelt, offering it. She drank bitter willow tea, grimaced. "Sleep," he urged. "Your eyes bleed fatigue. So do yours. I'll trade watch at midnight." She nodded, wrapped in her cloak. He settled beside her, shoulder to shoulder. No declarations were needed. Their silence wove around them like fur. Sometime deep in night's belly, LYANNA started awake to distant screaming wind. She glanced. Rhaegar sat cross-legged, harp cradled, amber strings glinting. He plucked a slow minor chord. Tune slid into her heart, filling cracks. He whispered, "Did I wake you?" "Your song did." She sat up. "I name it Ice and Ash," he said. "A promise that neither alone can crush the dark." "Play it for Robert," she murmured. "Play until he understands winter is no tavern tale." "I will." He set harp aside and brushed a curl from her forehead. "Rest, wolf." She obeyed, eyes fluttering close to the lull of his heart, louder to her than any chord. Days blurred. They crossed the stony foothills of the northern mountains and entered the marshes of the neck. Crannog mists coiled around willows. Frogs chirred despite frost. Howland Reed's gray men met them at the causeway. Faces painted green. They greeted LYANNA as long-missed ghost. She embraced Howland, tears sudden and fierce. He guided the party to Greywater Watch, never in the same place twice, but always safe. There they lingered 3 days, trading watchmen's news for reed healing herbs. Howland listened to tales of walkers, rubbing the pommel of his frog spear, eyes dark. Old Nan's fears come true, he said. South must rally or drown. He gave them boats, flat-bottomed skiffs skinned with pine tar, to navigate the Blackwater Rush headwaters. Floating islands drifted, carrying snow-laden rushes. Croaking toads echoed like muffled drums. LYANNA rode at Rhaegar's side, arms burning but mind calm. On the final day, the land rose firm. Moat Kaelin's shattered towers appeared, grim silhouettes against pewter sky. Northern banners snapped atop ramparts. Deerwolf, Merman, battle-axe of Serwyn. Ned Stark himself stood on the causeway, fur cloak billowing. Lyanna's breath hitched. She left the boat before it grounded, splashing through knee-deep water. Ned strode to meet her, eyes wide. Snow dusted his beard. They collided, brother and sister, arms locking in silent sobs. She smelled home. Smoke, pine, bread, memory. He pulled back, palms cupping her cheeks. "LYANNA," he whispered. "I live," she answered, "and winter marches." He looked past her, saw Rhaegar stepping onto marshbank, removing hood. Ned's gray eyes hardened but did not flare. He inclined his head. "Prince." Rhaegar bowed. "Lord Stark." Benjen clasped Ned's arm. "Brother, we bring ill tidings and fragile hope." They crossed into the moat. Fires burned in makeshift hearths. Soldiers warmed hands, faces grave. LYANNA saw glints of fear even among veterans. Ned led them into a squat tower used as war room. Maps littered a pine table. Around it clustered captains of the North. Wyman Manderly, Mage Mormont, Lord Serwyn. All turned when the party entered. Gasps rippled as they registered LYANNA alive. Rhaegar, unchained. Benjen, in black. Ned raised a hand. "My sister brings warning from the wall." He deferred to her. Standing before northern lords, LYANNA spoke steady. Of the attack, the collapse, the deathless blue fire. Rhaegar detailed the walkers' resistance to flame and iron. Meg Mormont swore stoutly. Wyman wiped sweat, though the room stood cold. "We must march," Ned concluded. "But not south, as Robert asked. To Storm's End, to quell Greyjoy raids. We march north to hold the wall." Wyman hesitated. "Redeploying leaves our coasts bare." "Coasts matter not if the dead flood behind," Ned answered. Serwyn, stooped and scarred, tapped the map. "We cannot march without the king's leave." "I will secure it," LYANNA said. "Rhaegar and I ride to King's Landing." Murmurs erupted. Ned lifted palm. "She is right. Robert will listen to her. He must. You will ride with Stark escort to the Trident. From there south via riverboat. I ride north to muster." Rhaegar stepped forward. "Lord Stark, I gave up claim to thrones when I chose exile. Yet the realm needs unity if I kneel to Robert." Ned cut him off, voice iron soft. "That gesture would help, but Robert's grudge is deep. Bring proof, not penance." He indicated a crate in the corner. Benjen pried lid, revealing shattered walker fragments sealed in salt. The frozen pieces still shimmered faintly. Meg recoiled. Manderley crossed himself. "These go south," Ned declared. "Let the small council deny what eyes behold." Rhaegar bowed. "Then south we ride." That dusk, Lyanna stood atop Moat Caelin's highest broken keep, watching northern banners wheel in the wind. Rhaegar joined, adjusting the travel harp slung on his back. "Once," she said quietly, "I fled this road for dreams. Now I return for nightmares." "Nightmares end when eyes open," he responded. "Let us wake the realm." She turned to him, moon rising behind, casting silver on his scarred face. "If Robert orders your head, I will bare my neck if it saves the realm." He touched her ring, the dragon glass band shining black. "But I think fire and ice together forge stronger steel." She laid her palm over his. "Together then." Northward, Ned's banners gathered like migrating birds. Southward, the King's Road waited, long ribbon of snow-dusted earth threading through Tully lands, past the ruins of the Trident, through fields still soaked with ghosts of fallen lions and dragons. Somewhere beyond, the Red Keep rose atop Aegon's Hill, and in its shadow, a king feasted, unaware winter had crossed his threshold. Lyanna inhaled the scent of peat smoke and distant snowmelt. She felt the hard, trembling edge of destiny settling onto her shoulders. Not a crown, but a mantle woven of every oath she had spoken since the day she rode from Winterfell to face the dragon, and found instead a man carrying songs inside Lyd's side. They descended to courtyard where horses waited, gray for the wolf, black for the dragon. Benjen pressed a bundle of dragonglass arrows into Rhaegar's hand. Howland Reed slipped a small carved horn to Lyanna, its mouth capped with gold. "Blow when all seems lost," he said. "The neck remembers favors owed." She thanked him and tucked the horn into her saddlebag. Snowfall began, gentle. Lyanna mounted, turning her face to the cold. Rhaegar swung into his saddle. Around them, torches lit, banners lifted. The southern gate creaked open. Ned kissed her brow. "Ride swift, bring the storm to heel." She smiled, fierce. "And you hold the wall." He squeezed her hand. Then he and Benjen wheeled north, spurring into the dark. Lyanna nudged her mare forward, Rhaegar matching stride. Behind them rode a dozen picked guards, House Stark's cavalry hand chosen by Ned, men and women who knew what stalked snowdrifts. They crossed the causeway at Decanter, water lapping frozen edges. At its far side, the King's Road beckoned south, a pale line under starlit vault. Lyanna looked once more toward the wall. Out of sight, but never out of mind. In her head, she heard the howl of distant deerwolves, answering each other across impossible leagues, stitching the world with invisible thread. Then she leaned into her horse's neck, whispered, "Fly," and arrowed south, snow streaming behind like the tail of a comet bound for the heart of a storm-lit realm that had forgotten how cold ice could burn.